went to orgies while my husband worked, he discovered everything, and now he's leaving me for good. Like most people, and like most of you who will read this, I've made mistakes before. I could probably fill a small notebook with all of them, but this one is probably the worst one I've ever made. This one ruined everything. When I met my husband Reggie, I was at a not-so-great time in my life. Things weren't great with my family or my job or even with my friends. I was kind of alone, and then we started talking, and he quickly took up way too much space in my life. That was probably why I didn't notice any of his red flags earlier. Reggie seemed like the perfect guy to me, but now I know that that was mostly because he was the only guy I had ever liked that much, and pretty much the only person I was speaking to at that time. He had a temper and a permanent bad attitude. The short of it is that he was a shithead on the best of days and a proper asshole on the worst. He was rude and could be a bit condescending, but ultimately he was an okay guy. And I'm not just saying that because I married him. He could be thoughtful and sweet, and he always made sure I was okay. He was an act of service kind of guy, so his kind of love consisted of grunting around the house, fixing things, and bringing me food. All those girly magazines would have probably said that all our issues stemmed from the fact that our love languages were out of sync, but that just wasn't realistic. Couples that fought the way we didn't fight just because of words of affirmation or gifts. Our relationship had just always been a bit rocky. I was stubborn, and so was he. We both got pissed off at the drop of a hat and weren't afraid to let whoever was around know that we were. In a way, we were kind of too similar, and so we butted heads. We had what anyone who knew us or had seen us interact before would describe as a tumultuous relationship. That was what the doctor had called when we tried couples therapy a few years ago. I'm still not sure if it was a good or bad thing that we never went back. Our life wasn't glamorous. My parents didn't like Reggie, and my friends thought that I could do better, but I didn't care. I loved him, and we had a good thing going. Our fights were never so serious that it affected what we had. That wasn't until a few years ago when something shifted because of me. I'd been working at this bar for the longest time. I still work at the bar, but back then I had just started out. I was only a few years in while all the other workers were seasoned. I was the newbie, and I was treated like it, which meant cleaning up and closing up most days. It happened one night when I was about to close up. There was this guy that was still there, sipping on the same drink he had been sipping on since he got in. I told him he had to leave so I could clean, and he surprised me by asking me to have a drink with him. At that point, I'd chased out more drunks than I could remember, and whenever I told them to get out, they usually said something misogynistic, or told me to pour them another and give them a few minutes. I'd never been asked to sit with them and drink for a little, though, so I'll admit that I was intrigued. I sat with him and we talked. There was nothing special about him in the end. He was like everyone else that walked into that bar, dealing with some pretty awful shit and trying to ignore it by drinking way too much. Hell, most of the bartenders, including me, were going through the same thing. The only difference was that we poured the drinks. And, maybe occasionally snuck one for ourselves while on the job. I say all that to say that there was no particular reason for what happened next. He wasn't particularly interesting or captivating. He was just another nameless face hoping to forget. Maybe that was it. He seemed so pathetic and relatable that I had pity for him. That's the only reason I can think of for why I didn't pull back when he leaned in. He kissed me. I kissed him back. And then afterwards, I took our glasses away and cleaned the countertops. Maybe I wanted him to not think about his shit for a few seconds. I think I wanted to help in my own strange way, which doesn't make any sense because I'd never been some Mother Teresa type, and I'd never kissed any of the other drunk losers I'd kicked out, so I really don't know. I do know, though, that one kiss, because I did tell Reggie about it when I got home, kind of messed up my marriage. Like I said, we fought almost all the time, but that was mostly because we always had different ways to handle things and rarely ever saw eye to eye. After that night, though, it was almost like he was picking fights, like he was going out of his way to stir shit with me, which was fair in the beginning. I mean, he said he forgave me, that it wasn't that serious, and that we could move past it, but I knew it wasn't like he would just get over it like that. I knew it would take a bit of time, so I was okay with putting up with his tantrums and drama, because I knew that I messed up. But after years of the same thing, I got tired and sick of it. Why would you tell me you forgive me, give me this stupid speech about how strong our relationship was, and how nothing could break us if we didn't let it, if you were just going to keep judging and punishing me for it? It didn't make sense, and after so long, I was over it. We were fighting nearly every day. It was always something with Reggie. He didn't want to go to dinner at my parents' house. I told him he could stay home. Suddenly, he starts going on about how I don't make an effort to fix the strained relationship between them. He doesn't like that I spend so much time at the bar, and why do I even work there anyway? And blah, blah, blah. It was always something, and it was exhausting. He didn't like the way I decorated the house, or how I made certain meals, or that I was too friendly with certain people. Nothing I could do was going to make him happy, and it's not like I was some angel either. I'd always known that I could be mean and a bitch, and Reggie, more often than not, bared the brunt of it. It wasn't like I was just taking all his bullshit on the chin. I'd never been the type to turn the other cheek. I gave it all right back, sometimes even twofold. But after so long, I was tired. I loved Reggie. I really, really did. He was my husband, the man I'd chosen to spend the rest of my life with. He was my person. But a few months ago, I started to wonder why he hadn't left when that night happened years ago, and I started to wish that he had. The fighting eventually became tired, and I started spending more time at the club to avoid it, which, in a roundabout way, caused more fights. But my nights were quiet, or at least as quiet as a bar could get, so I didn't care in the end. But it was spending so much time at the bar that led me to my next awful mistake, the big one, the reason for this post, because there was something I'd been hiding from Reggie for months at that point, and that was that my ex-boyfriend, Seth, had started working at the bar. Seth and I dated years ago, nearly a decade ago back then, so I really didn't see it as that much of a big deal. Reggie could and often did get jealous a lot, so I knew that he wouldn't have liked it, and he would have picked a fight and asked me to stop working at the bar, so I didn't tell him. It just didn't seem worth the trouble, and I couldn't stop working at the bar. The tips I was making alone covered most of our rent each month. It would have been stupid to quit. And besides, Seth never tried anything. He had a long-term girlfriend. We were just friendly with each other, and most days he was stuck doing inventory and restock, so we barely even saw PR spoke to each other. There was nothing to be jealous of. At least in the beginning, anyway. The problem was that it didn't stay that way. Like the last time I messed up, it happened one night at the bar. Only this time I was at the bar, even though it was Seth's turn to lock up because of a bad fight I'd had with Reggie earlier in the day. A lot of shit was said. We both took it just a little too far, so I didn't feel like being at the house or around him that night. I killed time by helping Seth clean and tuck stools under the tables, but eventually it was time for him to close, and that meant that I would have to leave and go back home. I was in the middle of texting one of my friends to see if I could spend the night at her place when Seth asked me if I wanted to come to his. He explained that a few of his friends were already over there, as well as his girlfriend, and that they met up weekly to drink together, play card games, shit like that, and that if I was interested, I was free to come. At that point, I'd met his girlfriend. She nice, and we were cordial with each other, but we weren't friends. But his friends, once upon a time, had also been my friends, back when we were dating, and I thought that maybe it would be nice to see them and hang out with them after so long, so I went with him. I had no idea just how twisted and crazy that night would turn out to be. We got to his place, and like he said, everyone was already there. I was expected some awkwardness, some stiffness between me and these people I hadn't been friends with in years, but it wasn't like that at all. They were incredibly warm and welcoming towards me. Seth and I hadn't ended things on a bad note per se, but sides were taken after the breakup, and they, being his friends, chose him. So I'd always imagined they all harbored some kind of shared resentment toward me or something, but that wasn't the case. They were super friendly. The night started off with everyone talking and catching up, telling each other about what was kind of going on in our lives. Me being the outsider now, I had to do a lot of the talking. None of them had heard from me in years, so I gave them a short and SFW version of what I had been up to for the last couple of years. Then after that, we played this drinking game. I can't even begin to remember all the rules, but it was mostly just about spilling secrets. Eventually, though, when we brought cards into the mix, it became a kind of strip poker thing. We played round after round, and each time whoever lost had to take off an item of clothing. After a while of playing the game, we were all relatively undressed, but too buzzed to care. And even after the cards, when we progressed to playing board games, no one bothered to put their clothes back on. We just continued on like that. It was the most fun I'd had in a long time, and I was not looking forward to going back home and having to explain to Reggie where I'd been and who I was with. The whole idea of it even seemed exhausting. And Seth, almost as if he could read my mind, reached over and whispered that I could stay the night if I wanted, and that his girlfriend could lend me some clothes in the morning. I had tried to play off how I was feeling and not make it obvious that something was affecting me back at the bar, but I guess Seth must have noticed it anyway, and he'd gone out of his way to invite me out and offer me a place to stay because of it. It was honestly the sweetest thing anyone had done for me in a while, and I was very grateful. The night passed on, and things weren't winding down. We were all still having fun and drinking when one of them suggested that we play spin the bottle, not the truth or dare kind, but the making out kind. I was immediately apprehensive, and I guess Seth also noticed that. He quickly explained that it wasn't that big of a deal, and that obviously I wouldn't have to kiss anyone if I didn't want to. That put me out was a bit, and I joined in the game. It took a few rounds, and a few of them kissing each other for it to get to me. My turn landed on Seth, and I remember telling myself that it wasn't that serious as we reached for each other. Before we kissed, though, I glanced at his girlfriend, and she gave me a small nod, telling me that she was fine with it. So we kissed. The kiss was great. We had chemistry and history. I was still attracted to him, and from the way he kissed me, I was sure he was still attracted to me. Things started to get a bit more heated, though, and I pulled back, worried that we'd gone too far, and everyone else was probably staring at us in shock. But I was the one who was shocked when I looked around and saw that everyone else was getting heated with each other too. They were all kissing and touching, and I was incredibly confused. I wasn't sure if Seth and I's kiss was what caused the shift, or if there were undertones from the start. I was just about to ask about it, about what exactly was going on, and if this was why I'd been invited in the first place, when I felt a hand on my cheek. It was Seth's girlfriend. She turned my head to face her and then kissed me, and without even thinking about it, I kissed her back. We were all way too drunk. I was too drunk. But it wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing or want what happened next. Things got more intense between us. There was more kissing and touching, and then after a while, Seth joined in. He pulled me into his lap, and things just kind of escalated from there. I can't even begin to describe how it felt to have both of their hands on my body, both of them kissing me and giving me all that attention and pleasure, and it was such a different and even enjoyable experience to give that pleasure back. At different points during the night and during whatever that was with Seth and his girlfriend, I looked around and saw that everyone else was going for it too. To be completely honest, it was basically just an orgy. They were all having sex with each other and getting way too close and switching partners. It was intense and probably one of the craziest things I'd ever experienced. Now, I'm definitely not a blushing virgin or anything, but the most I'd ever experienced when it came to multiple partners was kissing two guys in the same night at a party in college. That was it. But then that night, things changed. We all passed out in the living room afterwards, and when I woke up the next morning, I didn't need to look at my phone and see the numerous missed calls to know that Reggie was probably losing his mind. I rushed out of the apartment without looking back and got home as fast as I could, and as I expected, Reggie was waiting for me when I got home. That was the angriest I'd ever seen him. He was so upset and furious, he demanded to know where I had gone and who I'd been with. He claimed that he knew I wasn't at the club and that I shouldn't lie to him. I was so overwhelmed with everything. I was feeling guilt. I was feeling anger. I was feeling fed up. I was feeling all of it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't yell back or match his anger. All I wanted was to go up to bed, rest, and pretend like I hadn't just come back from a full-on orgy with my ex-boyfriend, his new girlfriend, and all his friends. So I told him that he was blowing it all out of proportion and that the bar closed late. I lied and said that I was way too tired after closing, and so I'd spent the night at the bar. Our boss had a foldable bed in his office that he used whenever he was working late, and he allowed us to use it too whenever we needed. Reggie knew about the bed because we had snuck into my boss's office to have sex before, so when he heard me say that, he started to back off a bit. He started to believe that I was telling the truth, and I was so thankful that he was starting to back off. He was still a little suspicious, but I could tell that he was just choosing to believe in me, to believe that I was being honest. Things between us got even more frigid after that. It felt like he was waiting to catch me or something, waiting for me to slip up. Things were also pretty strained between me and Seth. He kept trying to talk to me at work, But after everything that had happened, even though I had enjoyed it, I just wanted to put it behind me. Things weren't always great with Reggie, but I didn't want our marriage to go to shit over a stupid, drunken mistake. I thought it would be best if I just avoided Seth and we just ignored it, but he wanted the exact opposite of that. Almost a week after that night, and a week of avoiding Seth as much as I could, he finally cornered me one night when I was locking up. I thought he'd gone home, but he'd really just been waiting for a chance to get me alone. I tried to leave, but he practically begged me to just listen to him for a minute. Against my better judgment, I did. We both stood outside the bar, and I listened to him as he explained that a few years back, something had just clicked in his friend group. They got closer and started to explore each other. He told me that they were all open and essentially in one big polycule. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, I had seen it happen right in front of me, but it was different hearing him say it. Of course, I had heard of things like that before. I just never imagined that I would be a part of it. Honestly, I was a bit freaked out, and I tried to leave, but again, he begged me to hear him out. He invited me to another one of their game nights and told me that it would just be to hang out, and that I obviously didn't have to partake in anything else. I'm not sure why I said yes. I don't know if it was because the sex was good, or if it was because my night with all of them was the most fun I'd had in a while, and the first time I'd felt like a part of something in years. I'm not sure, but I agreed. I followed him back to his place, fully knowing that what happened before would probably happen again. I followed him knowing that Reggie was probably waiting for me back at the house with an attitude and a scowl, and maybe it was knowing that, maybe it was the thought of going home to Reggie and all his issues that made me say yes. I guess whatever it was doesn't really matter in the end. The fact was that I had said yes, and that night was the start of something that I let get too out of control. After that night, it almost became routine. We closed the bar, and then I followed Seth back to his apartment where everyone else was waiting, after telling Reggie that work was exhausting and that I was spending the night at the bar, and we would all hang out for a bit before having sex. Like I said, they were very open, and so was I when I was with them. In the months that followed, I experienced and explored something with everyone in the group. We liked to alternate so that no one got with the same partner 2 nights in a row. We were essentially having these scheduled orgies every other weeknight and hanging out during the day. Reggie took on more night shifts at his security job at that time, so most times I wouldn't even have to make up an excuse. I would be home before he was, and he would never know that I had gone anywhere after the club. He was working almost entire days while I was going out, and having sex with this group he knew nothing about. After a while, it started to be about more than just the sex, though. I mean, that was great, but what was even better was the community that it gave me. I didn't realize how isolating being with Reggie was until I found them, but even at that, I didn't want to lose my husband. I wanted the best of both things, which was greedy and reckless, but I really thought I could balance it. I thought I could keep both parts separate and alive, but I was wrong. It was an intense amount of sex that I was having with them, and that made me less than interested in sex with Reggie, which he obviously noticed because while our relationship had its many, many ups and downs, our sex life had always been more than healthy. He asked about it, but I brushed him off, like I brushed off all his other concerns. I really thought that I was in the clear and that he would stay oblivious. It wasn't like I didn't feel guilty at all. I did, but I was also so tired of feeling bad, which I almost exclusively felt around Reggie. I just wanted to feel good, to be happy for a bit, and I found that with them, with our nights together, and that was why I couldn't give them up. But my stubbornness and my desperation to hold on to them would come back to bite me in the ass and ruin everything. It was one night a few weeks ago, Reggie told me that he had a night shift, so I planned a night with the group, at the house of all places. So after my shift at the club, Seth and I went back to the house to set up everything. I had no idea that while that was going on, Reggie was using the spare I had given him to open up the bar and discover that I was lying, that I wasn't spending the night in the office. We were deep in the middle of the orgy when Reggie came home. He practically burst through the door, almost like he knew what he was going to see when he did. For the first time in our entire marriage, Reggie was calm. He asked them all to get dressed and leave his house, which they did. Everyone but Seth was surprised because they didn't know that I was married. They got dressed, picked up their things, and left, leaving just Reggie and I. I was so surprised by his presence and even more surprised by the fact that he didn't yell. I didn't even know where to begin when it came to explaining myself. There was honestly nothing to explain, and I think we both knew that. He told me, in the calmest tone I'd ever heard from him, that he knew that I was up to something. He knew that I had gone back to my old ways and was just waiting for a moment to catch me, so that there could be no excuse I could make up, no way to weasel my way out of trouble. He said that he wanted a divorce and nothing to do with me anymore. I tried to beg him, to tell him that we'd been together too long to throw it all away over this, but he didn't want to hear it. He told me that he was done, like he was actually done this time. There was no getting back together or forgiveness. We were done, for good. I couldn't believe, and for a while I didn't believe it. We'd always had issues, but we always came back to each other. Always. That was just how things were. Even when he asked me to move out and asked for the ring back, I moved and I gave it back, but I did all that still believing that somehow, eventually, we would get back together. Even when I was abandoned by the group, apparently infidelity was something they didn't support in their lifestyle, and they would have never gotten involved with me if they'd known that I was cheating on Reggie. I thought I would still have him to fall back on. But today I had to sign the divorce papers. Signing them has made me realize that this is actually happening. It's real. I'm losing my husband for good this time, and I have no idea what to do. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but I loved him. I loved us. And now it's gone. It's all gone because I was too greedy and because I couldn't be honest with anyone, not even myself. I've lost it all because of my own actions, and I'm not sure how to deal with that. I ruined my own life.